a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Robert Plant. Robert Anthony Plant is an English singer, songwriter, and musician, best known as the lead singer and lyricist of the rock band Led Zeppelin. A powerful and wide vocal range has given him a successful singing career spanning over 50 years. Plant is regarded as one of the greatest singers in the history of rock and roll. In 2006, Heavy Metal magazine Hit Parader named Plant the greatest metal vocalist of all time. In 2009, Plant was voted the greatest voice in rock in a poll conducted by Planet Rock. In 2008, Rolling Stone editors ranked him number 15 on their list of the 100 best singers of all time. In 2011, Rolling Stone readers ranked Plant the greatest of all lead singers. Early life and musical beginnings. Robert Anthony Plant was born on the 20th of August 1948, in the Black Country town of West Bromwich, Staffordshire, England, to Robert C. Plant, a qualified civil engineer who worked in the Royal Air Force during World War II, and Annie Celia Plant, a Romanical woman. He grew up in Kidderminster, Worcestershire. Plant gained an interest in singing and rock and roll music at an early age. He left King Edward VI Grammar School for Boys in Stourbridge in his mid-teens and developed a strong passion for the blues, mainly through his admiration for Willie Dixon, Robert Johnson and early rendition of songs in this genre. He abandoned training as a chartered accountant after only 2 weeks to attend college in an effort to gain more GCE passes and to become part of the English Midlands blues scene. "I left home at 16, he said, and I started my real education musically, moving from group to group, furthering my knowledge of the blues and of other music which had weight and was worth listening to." Plant's early blues influences included Johnson, Booker White, Skip James, Jerry Miller, and Sleepy John Estes. Plant had various jobs while pursuing his music career, one of which was working for the major British construction company Wimpey in Birmingham in 1967 laying tarmac on roads. He also worked at Woolworths in Halesowen Town for a short period of time. He cut 3 obscure singles on CBS Records and sang with a variety of bands, including the Crawling King Snakes, which brought him into contact with drummer John Bonham. They both went on to play in the Band of Joy, merging blues with newer psychedelic trends. Early years. In 1968, guitarist Jimmy Page was in search of a lead singer for his new band and met Plant after being turned down by his first choice, Terry Reid, who referred him to a show at a teacher training college in Birmingham. In front of Page, Plant sang Jefferson Airplane's "Somebody to Love," leading Page to the end of his search. As recalled by Plant and Page, with a shared passion for music, Plant and Page immediately developed a strong relationship and began their writing collaboration with reworkings of earlier blues songs. Plant received no songwriting credits on the band's first album, allegedly, because he was still under contract to CBS Records at the time. Plant brought along John Bonham as drummer, and they were joined by John Paul Jones, who had previously worked with Page as a studio musician. Jones called Page on the phone before they checked out Plant, and Page hired Jones immediately. Initially dubbed the New Yardbirds, in 1968, the band soon came to be known as Led Zeppelin. The band's eponymous debut album hit the charts in 1969 and is widely credited as a catalyst for the heavy metal genre. Plant has commented that it is unfair for people to think of Zeppelin as heavy metal, as almost a third of their music was acoustic. In 1975, Plant and his wife Maureen were seriously injured in a car crash in Rhodes, Greece. This significantly affected the production of Led Zeppelin's 7th album Presence for a few months while he recovered, and forced the band to cancel the remaining tour dates for the year. In July 1977, his son Karak died at the age of 5 while Plant was engaged on Led Zeppelin's concert tour of the United States. It was a devastating loss for the family. Plant retreated to his home in the Midlands and for months afterwards he questioned his future. Karak's death later inspired him to write several songs in tribute. All My Love, featured on Led Zeppelin's final studio album, 1979's In Through the Outdoor, and Blue Train, featured on Page and Plant's second and final album, 1998's Walking into Clarksdale. The song, I Believe, on Plant's solo album Fate of Nations is another tribute to his late son. Lyrics. Plant did not begin writing song lyrics with Led Zeppelin until the making of Led Zeppelin II, in 1969. According to Jimmy Page, Plant's lyrics with Led Zeppelin were often mystical, philosophical and spiritual, alluding to events in classical and Norse mythology, such as Immigrant Song, which refers to Valhalla and Viking conquests. However, the song, No Quarter, is often misunderstood to refer to the god Thor. The song actually refers to Mount Thor. Another example is The Rain Song. Plant was also influenced by J.R.R. Tolkien, whose book series inspired lyrics in some early Led Zeppelin songs. Most notably, The Battle of Evermore, Misty Mountain Hop, No Quarter, Rumble On, and Over the Hills and Far Away contain verses referencing Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Conversely, Plant sometimes used more straightforward blues-based lyrics dealing primarily with sexual innuendo, as in The Lemon Song, Trampled Underfoot, and Black Dog. Welsh mythology also forms a basis of Plant's interest in mystical lyrics. He grew up close to the Welsh border and would often take summer trips to Snowdonia. Plant bought a Welsh sheep farm in 1973, and began taking Welsh lessons and looking into the mythology of the land. Plant's first son, Carrac, was named after the Welsh warrior Caratekas. The song, Bron y Awr Stomp, is named after the 18th century Welsh cottage Bron y Awr owned by a friend of his father. It later inspired the song, Bron y Awr. The songs, Misty Mountain Hop, That's the Way, and early dabblings in what would become Stairway to Heaven, were written in Wales and lyrically reflect Plant's mystical view of the land. Critic Steve Turner suggests that Plant's early and continued experiences in Wales served as the foundation for his broader interest in the mythologies he revisits in his lyrics. Page's passion for diverse musical experiences influenced Plant to explore Africa, specifically Marrakesh in Morocco, where he encountered Kulthum. That musical inspiration eventually culminated in Kashmir. Both he and Jimmy Page revisited these influences during their reunion album No Quarter. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant unleaded in 1994. In his solo career, Plant tapped into these influences many times, most notably in the 2002 album, Dreamland. Arguably one of Plant's most significant achievements with Led Zeppelin was his contribution to the track, Stairway to Heaven, an epic rock ballad featured on Led Zeppelin IV that drew influence from folk, blues, Celtic traditional music and hard rock among other genres. Most of the lyrics of the song were written spontaneously by Plant in 1970 at Headley Grange. While never released as a single, the song has topped polls as the greatest song of all time. Plant is also recognized for his lyrical improvisation in Led Zeppelin's live performances, often singing verses previously unheard on studio recordings. One of the most famous Led Zeppelin musical devices involves Plant's vocal mimicking of bandmate Jimmy Page's guitar effects. This can be heard in the songs How Many More Times, Dazed and Confused, The Lemon Song, You Shook Me, Nobody's Fault But Mine, and Sick Again. He is also known for his light-hearted, humorous and unusual on-stage banter. Plant often discusses the origin and background of the songs during his shows, and sometimes provides social comment as well. He frequently talks about American blues musicians as his inspiration, mentioning artists like Robert Johnson, Howlin' Wolf, Blind Willie Johnson, and Willie Dixon at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony and the 2007 Ahmet Ertegun tribute concert with Led Zeppelin. Stage persona. Plant enjoyed great success with Led Zeppelin throughout the 1970s and developed a compelling image as the charismatic rock and roll frontman. Similar to his contemporaries, The Who singer Roger Daltrey, Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones and Jim Morrison of The Doors, with his mane of long blonde hair and powerful, bare-chested appearance, Plant helped to create the God of Rock and Roll, or Rock God, archetype. On stage, Plant was particularly active in live performances, often dancing, jumping, skipping, snapping his fingers, clapping, making emphatic gestures to emphasize a lyric or cymbal crash, throwing back his head, or placing his hands on his hips. As the 1970s progressed, he, along with the other members of Led Zeppelin, became increasingly flamboyant on stage, and wore more elaborate, colorful clothing and jewelry. According to Classic Rock magazine, Once he had a couple of US tours under his belt, Percy Plant swiftly developed a staggering degree of bravado and swagger that irrefutably enhanced Led Zeppelin's rapidly burgeoning appeal. In 1994, during his Unleaded tour with Jimmy Page, Plant himself reflected tongue-in-cheek upon his Led Zeppelin showmanship. One of the oddest awards he received was the rock scene magazine Chest-O-Rama. Readers of the magazine had to decide who had the best chest in rock, and Plant was the winner. When they contacted him about it, he replied, "I'm really greatly honored, although it's hard for me to be eloquent on the subject of my chest." Early career and success, 1982-1993. After Led Zeppelin disbanded in December 1980, Plant briefly considered abandoning music to pursue a career as a teacher in the Rudolf Steiner education system. Going so far as to be accepted for teacher training, he nevertheless embarked on a successful solo career, helped by encouragement from Genesis drummer Phil Collins, who would go on to play with him. Plant's solo career began with the album Pictures at 11 in 1982, followed by 1983's The Principle of Moments. Popular tracks from this period include Big Log, In the Mood, Little by Little, Far Post, Tall Cool One, and later, I Believe. This last track, like Led Zeppelin's All My Love, was written for and dedicated to his late son, Karak. Whilst Plant avoided performing Led Zeppelin songs through much of this period, his tours in 1983 and in 1985 were very successful, often performing to sold-out arena-sized venues. In 1986, Plant performed at the Birmingham Heartbeat charity concert with other famous Midlands musicians. Through the late 1980s and early 1990s, Plant co-wrote 3 solo albums with keyboardist/songwriter Phil Johnston. These were Now and Zen in 1988, Manic Nirvana in 1990, and the 1993 Fate of Nations. Songs from this third album, plus a smattering of Led Zeppelin classics, made up the set list for Plant's acclaimed Sunset performance on the main stage at Glastonbury Festival in 1993. It was Johnston who talked Plant into playing Led Zeppelin songs in his live shows, something Plant had always previously resisted, not wanting to be forever known as the former Led Zeppelin vocalist. Although Led Zeppelin split in 1980, Plant occasionally collaborated with Jimmy Page on various projects through this period, including forming a short-lived all-star group with Page and Jeff Beck in 1984, called the Honey Drippers. They released an album called The Honey Drippers, Volume 1, and the band had a #3 hit with a remake of the Phil Phillips tune, Sea of Love, plus a follow-up hit with a cover of Roy Brown's Rocking at Midnight. The pair again worked together in the studio on the 1988 Page solo effort Outrider, and in the same year Page contributed to Plant's album Now and Zen. Also, on the 15th of May 1988, Plant appeared with Page as a member of Led Zeppelin at the Atlantic Records 40th anniversary concert. Plant's live collaborations with other well-known musicians continued when he took to the stage with Queen at Wembley Stadium for 1992's The Freddie Mercury Tribute Concert for AIDS Awareness, where he sang Queen's Innuendo and Crazy Little Thing Called Love, and Led Zeppelin's Kashmir and Thank You. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?